Hey everyone, it's Skiesti. I've been asked a lot what changes I'd like to see for Mercy. It's not really a secret that Mercy isn't that good compared to the other supports right now. I mean, she's got her movement and the value of pocketing, keeping her somewhat playable, but she's far from being an optimal pick. Now, I'm not a developer, and I'm not gonna pretend that I know how to balance a hero, because I don't. I know Mercy's problems, which I address in this video over here, that I definitely recommend checking out. However, I'm uncertain how to fix them in a way that's fair. Instead, I'll address some of these smaller changes that would definitely be welcome for Mercy. I've talked about Mercy's passive health regen a lot in other videos, so I won't spend too much time on it here. Right now, Mercy's regen heals 22.5 HP per second and kicks in after 1.5 seconds, instead of its former 1 second. Her current self-regen rate in Overwatch 2 is worse than it was in Overwatch 1, which is weird because in Overwatch 2, in that environment, she needs it so much more. I've found that in Overwatch 2, your second support is just less likely to heal you because of the self-regen, and you end up having to fend for yourself a lot. Her movement does help with that, but it'd be great if her self-regen kicked in after 1 second again to give her more of a chance to survive in certain situations that she would have previously lived in Overwatch 1. Moving on to Mercy's healing. I think her healing is fine. If you give her too much healing, then she becomes too healing-oriented, which I don't think is really the direction that I want them to go for her. So her healing is fine when she's played alongside a support that outputs a lot of heals, but some certain pairings of Mercy with a tank and support, for example, D.Va, Mercy, and Zen, just feels so terrible. A change that would be interesting to see is having Mercy's heal adjusted so that it scales depending on a hero's class. For example, Mercy would heal 50 HP per second for the DPS and support classes, and for the tank class, she would heal 75 HP per second. Her ult charge from healing would definitely have to be tweaked with this, but I'll get into that a bit more when we talk about damage boost, because that is sort of related. This heal change could also maybe be percentage based, but that might result in inconsistencies with how her healing feels. Therefore, a flat number depending on a hero's class, aka the 50 or 75 HP per second, might be better. This sort of change would make it so Mercy is able to keep up in comps where she's required to be more of a main healer for a massive tank health pool, and still be able to squeeze in a good amount of damage boost, instead of having to heal the entire time, only for your tank to just inevitably die anyway. This change suggestion would allow her to reduce her time spent healing in certain situations, and leads us perfectly onto her damage boost. Damage boost feels good in Overwatch 2, mostly because there's more potential and value in damage dealt from players, and Mercy is great to amplify that damage. With one less tank and your second support having their own self-regen, you're able to damage boost even more on Mercy, which means focusing less on healing. I would love it if damage boost gave more ult charge and healing gave less ult charge. This is a suggestion I first heard from Neandra and absolutely fell in love with. It encourages Mercy players to damage boost more, which is what you should be doing anyway with her, and that's where she just finds her main value. In addition, since there's only one tank now, this change would make it so you're less likely to steal the ult charge your second support would otherwise get from healing the tank. Resurrection is a powerful ability. There's absolutely no denying that. Most players don't enjoy playing against it, so it's hard to discuss potential changes for it. Personally, I do still think that Res has a place in Overwatch, even though a lot of people don't. However, the game is quite fast-paced, more so than Overwatch 1, and Resurrection, despite how powerful it is, well, it just falls flat in its potential to be used. Because of the cast time, it's harder to go for a res since you'll receive less assistance from your team, leaving you more vulnerable. The opportunities to res just don't feel very frequent, meaning you've got an ability that you don't use a lot of the time, and that feels kinda bad. The cast time for res can't be completely removed. It's necessary to have counterplay to some degree, but having the cast time reduced or maybe a damage reduction for Mercy during the cast time would be incredibly welcomed. Something else I'd enjoy is a res refresh when you pop Valkyrie. So what I mean by that is, say you just used res 5 seconds ago, if you pop Valk, you'd be able to res again, and then it'd be put on its 30-second cooldown. This isn't necessarily something that I think should be added. It'd likely likely be much too strong and be an absolute nightmare to balance. But it'd just be fun and give you a bit more to do with the ability. Let's talk Valkyrie, and I'll start with the most obvious change. Mercy players have been asking for her beam not to break when activating Valkyrie for so long. The ultimate is a transformation ult, which is why the beam breaks, but we saw in an experimental card in Overwatch 1 that it is possible to have beam not break when Valkyrie activates. So maybe we could get that implemented, please? Other than beam not breaking, I'm on the fence about what I'd like to see for Valkyrie. I flip-flop back and forth between finding good uses for it as is, and then thinking that Mercy should maybe have a more defensive ultimate like Lucio's or Zenyatta's instead of Valkyrie, which, yeah, I mean, it can be used in a defensive way, but it isn't defensive in the same way as Lucio or Zen's ults. Or, hey, maybe Valkyrie could allow the use of both her healing and damage boost beams at the same time. It'd be cool to see her able to do two things at once in at least one part of her kit. Other supports can do more than one thing at a time, so let Mercy be able to in her ult. I'd love that. Or perhaps we could get damage reduction applied to beam targets or even some kind of speed boost given. It just is something to make Valk a bit more impactful than how it is in its current state. Another thing is that I found that Mercy's movement outside of Valk is better and more fluid than her movement in Valk, which is pretty silly because her ultimate is supposed to enhance all of her abilities, but it makes her movement a bit more clunky. I don't really have a suggestion for that, but I just wanted to point it out. It's kind of funny because a lot of people have watched clips of me outside of Valk and then I'll pop Valk mid-clip and they'll be like, what the heck? I thought you were already using Valk. Onto Guardian Angel. Mercy players are very much aware how clunky close and mid-range Guardian Angels and Superjumps feel with how the meter works currently. I've been utilizing backward or directional Guardian Angel much more and haven't found myself close or mid-range to my allies, but when I do find myself in those situations, it gets pretty messy pretty fast. It'd be great to see the meter adjusted so that, depending on Mercy's distance from her Guardian Angel target, the meter will charge faster or slower. So if Mercy's close to her ally, it'll charge faster, and if she's farther away, it'll charge slower. Another thing I'd love for Mercy's Guardian Angel is to allow Angelic Descent to control the height of her jumps again. I'm finding that because I'm keeping more distance from my allies to prevent close or mid-range Guardian Angels, when I need to super jump, I end up having way too much height without a way to halt my momentum. It really doesn't feel great, and a small quality of life change would be, in addition to the meter being based on distance, to let Angelic Descent control the height again like they tested out in one of the betas. This little change would give Mercy more control over the height when it comes to longer range flights. Also, if the meter change based on distance is ever actually implemented, you need a way to control your height so you don't go too high when you're close to your target anyway, and this would be a great solution for it. When it comes to Mercy's pistol, one of the places she's lacking is when it comes to damage contribution because of the way that her kit and playstyle work. I've heard so many suggestions to give her more damage on her pistol, and I've got one word to say about that. Stop. Just don't. Most Mercy players use a high sensitivity so they can be constantly and quickly looking around. I'd love to see a separate sensitivity introduced for Mercy so that you can have a different sense for when you're using her pistol versus using her staff. And another little thing is that I use damage boost on mouse 1 and heal on mouse 2, which means that when I go to pistol, I have to use M2. So it would be nice if I could somehow find a way to make it so that even though damage boost is M1 and heal is M2, that I could swap my pistol to M1 and not have to have it on M2. That one's a bit more niche because I know not a lot of people do that, but yeah. And that'll be all from me for now. These are just some changes for Mercy that would be nice to have, and I also kind of just wanted a video that I can direct people to when they ask what changes I want for Mercy, because it happens pretty often. Let me know in the comments what you think of these changes and what you'd like to see from Mercy. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you next time.